It's such a nice day to be at the card pool with this lovely weather we're having. I am Stu Galetta.
And I'm Kyle Robertson.
And today we are judging Judgment.
We are indeed, and this is part 4, the final part of our multi-part set review of Judgment. If you want to take a look back at some of the other things we've talked about, you can check out our previous videos where we talked about both the money cards and the hidden gems of Judgment as well. But without further ado, let's start this review. And I guess I should probably explain how we do this anyway, shouldn't I?
Well, if you don't, I will, Kyle.
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead then. We rank our sets here at the card pool based on a 4-grade scale. We go from bronze up to silver, and then up to gold, and for the very tip top, we can give out a platinum rating. And in this video, we're going to be talking a bit about a bunch of different elements from Judgment. We're going to be talking about themes and mechanics, our hidden gems, followed by our money cards, as seen in our videos, and finally, what we think Judgment's impact on the game of Magic was as a whole.
And then from this is what we're going to decide our rank based off of whether it is a bronze to platinum. So let's go ahead and dive right in, and what's better than start with the theme and mechanics?
Yeah, all right, let's do it. So, we actually have a lot of things to cover here, but first of all, let's go to some of the
wish cards.
Yeah, that's right. Wish cards.
And let's look at Living Wish, one we have right up here. That's a prime example of it. So we'll go ahead and I'll read this one for us. So Living Wish, it is a sorcery in this case, in which you choose a card. You choose a creature or a land card from outside the game, you reveal it, and you put it into your hand, and then you remove this card from the game. So out of all the cycles of the wish cards, they do a variety of things, whether it's for instance in sorceries, creatures, enchantments, and anything else in between. And what it is, it pretty much makes it so you swap out that card for this card. And it makes it so you can have a better accessibility with the sideboard that you have to make it so that you can have a better answer than the one that you currently might have in the deck. So
yeah, and that's something we did kind of cover in our previous video, which is the wish cards have kind of been severely limited by multiple rulings changes over the years, in that you can't just go and grab anything out of your binder, you can't just go and grab any card that's in exile, because that is now technically a different zone of the game.
He's been so upset about that ever since. I've had to go ahead and correct him every time. Especially with Mastermind's Inquisition. He was that close to saying that was a really good card. It's like, and it got Exile with Swords, and I can get it back. It's like, no, you can't.
No, it's very sad. But that said, the wish cards are interesting. And in some cases, like if you play with sideboards in Commander or something like that, I guess they could be useful.
Competitive Commander.
Yeah, but for the most part, honestly, I wouldn't really bother with these if you're just having fun with friends. It's just like, why wouldn't you just play a good card, you know?
Yeah, or it's a filler spot if your deck's kind of not hitting the 100 card count, but I really... Have you ever actually made one? You're like, oh, well, I have room for 30 cards. Like, no, it's like I'm over by 30 cards.
Almost always.
Every time.
Yeah.
But moving away from the wishes, we have another mechanic from this set, and it is flashback.
Ooh, I love this one.
So I'll take it away.
All right. Well, for example, let's take a look at a card like Cabal Therapy. Now, it has an ability itself where, you name a non-land card, target player reveals their hand and discards all cards of the chosen name, but you can cast it again from your graveyard by paying its flashback cost. Now, a lot of cards have this, and it's either a mana cost or some other kind of cost. In this case, it's sacrifice a creature. There are several...
very low cost.
Yeah, it is pretty much. And there are several other cards from this set that do very similar things like this. Mostly, they actually have flashback costs that are not actually just mana costs. They're actually tap some creatures or pay some life or do something like this.
They broke the mold
creature.
With this one, which is very refreshing because, I mean, if you don't have to pay mana for something, and this is why you see stuff like, what's that blue counter spell? That's like you just discard a blue card or exile it from your hand.
There's a lot of them that actually do that.
To just get it, yeah, but I can't remember the famous one. Force of Will.
There we go. Okay,
That's it. Force of Will is one of the better examples of that. So if you can go ahead and not have a mana cost, you inherently can get it out without having those kind of stipulations tacked onto it. So having alternative costs is always valuable.
It really is, and Flashback is just such a powerful tool for reusing the effects of really good cards. I mean, we only see it on instants and sorceries because that's the only place it really fits, and obviously, in a lot of cases, having an instant on Flashback is kind of better than having a sorcery almost, because it can come out on anyone's turn. But always, always, always being able to play stuff for more value a second time, or even more than that, is great. Being able to play stuff from your graveyard is also great, because that works with a whole variety of cards. I think this was just a really, really good creation on the part of Wizards of the Coast. Flashback is a great mechanic, and we've seen it come back time and time again.
Yeah, and for good reason. But also, the thing that you were also saying, how you get the card back again, singleton format, having the same effect twice is only going to give you better chances. It's like having a second card on one.
It's true, and we see cards like Lingering Souls still hanging out in Modern with good decks.
Still lingering, I think
yeah,
you mean.
right, and it's just... that just goes to show you just how incredibly powerful Flashback is. Half the time, you don't even want to play the thing for its primary cost. Just chuck it into the graveyard and play it for less.
Or the Flashback's much steeper, like with something like Army of the Damned.
Yeah,
so
but still good.
Still good. But moving away from that, another thing that we do see in this set are incarnations, and we'll look at a card called Anger for that. So on this card, it has a mana cost, it's got a body, it's got stats, but the thing that we really care about it is what its text is saying. And it says, as long as Anger is in your graveyard, you can, and control a mountain, creatures you control have haste. Now, there's a whole cycle of this in all the colors, blue, green, red, white, and they all have something that's tied to a basic land, or a land of that type, and an effect that activates from the graveyard. Wonder's a little bit more the typical one, but in this set, they all just love being in the graveyard, and you get additional value from them. So if you play old school Magic, you play the creature, it dies, it still does something, and it's really, really good.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there's a cycle of uncommon incarnations like Anger and Wonder that revolve around having certain basic land types. There's also a rare cycle of incarnations like Genesis, for example, and Glory that just need to be in the grave. They don't need any kind of land type, but they just need a mana cost.
Glory needs a plains, or does it have
Valor?
Valor?
Well, Glory's sort of an exception to the rule there, but they don't require basic lands to be in play for their effects to activate from the graveyard.
Sure.
They just require a certain mana cost to be paid.
And the incarnations actually, they came back to them again in future sets, but instead of being in the grave, they love being out of them. And Vigor, I'm talking solely to you, because legit, it's an awesome card, and having it in the grave would only help you. Regrettably, Wizards is on to these sneaky plays that I would like to do in this scenario, but instead it has the ability to jump out of the grave and keep going back in, which has its own plays, and we're not really talking about that. But incarnations have affected Magic, and I think this was the first one to actually pop them up, right?
Yeah, it definitely was. And there's ones like Filth out there, for example, is also incredibly powerful.
It's a dirty card.
It really is, especially in conjunction with something like Urborg. You know how that whole thing works.
I wasn't meaning that.
Yeah, but but the incarnation cards, just like Flashback, are incredibly powerful because they just work from the graveyard, and that's just so great. You always love having a second hand in the form of the graveyard, but I will say they need actually some support to work, unlike Flashback, because first of all, some of them need a certain land type or a certain color of mana in order to work, and secondly, you need to get them in the graveyard. On the field, they're terrible. You really never want that to happen.
They're vulnerable to exile, and again, it is a graveyard-based strategy, so again, grave hate exists. If you get hit from your grave, you've lost a lot of work that you've done. And inherently, you have no other options. But I think that's going to pretty much conclude it so far on our mechanics. And let's move ahead to onto the money cards. Now, this will be the next section that we will go ahead and judge this based off of. And Kyle, how did you feel about the money cards?
I felt really pretty great about them, Stu. I mean, let's look at some of these cards we got here, like Genesis, Mirari's Wake, and Battle Screech. These are all cards that really came up for me in that we all know these cards. These are some of the staples of Magic, but I should say more in the casual sense. You don't see many Battle Screeches or Mirari's Wakes being played in formats like, Vintage, Legacy, all that stuff where these cards are actually legal.
Sure.
You see them being played around the kitchen table. You see them being played in fun little bird tribal decks or commander decks that need lots of mana ramp, those kind of things. So I would say that while this set wasn't really a winner with the money cards in terms of competitive play, it's a real win for the casual crowd. That's where this is based.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I mean, Genesis, I would say, might be the exception to this, and Mirari's Wake kicks up a notch. So actually, the way we have it lined up, 1, 2, and 3, number 1 is definitely number 1, and 2 is definitely falling in between. Mirari's Wake is a card, though, that can really put you ahead of your opponents. Again, you have to be in those colors and everything else put aside. It could be more competitive than Genesis. I don't know. But, yeah, Battle Screech falls off the bandwagon. I hate that card. I don't hate that card. It's just very useless in my book, and it is a horrible card. I'll change it. I'll say something positive. You get birds.
Yeah. Well, my point was...
everyone loves feeding pigeons in the park, and
but my
that's
point,
all they do.
Yeah, my point was that these money
throw
cards
breadcrumbs at them.
are more holding their value because most casual players like them and use them more than they're really sought after competitively. They're not really all that expensive for money cards if you really think about it.
Well, Mirari's Wake has been reprinted a good amount of times, actually.
Exactly, and a lot of these have.
Well, Genesis I don't think has. Actually, that's OG in this set.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple that haven't, but a lot of them actually have been. And I think that some of them could be winners competitively, but others probably not so much.
Like the birds, they're wieners instead of winners.
more for the casual crowd than really anything else.
But enough of these money... Oh, yeah, I'm going to say what I think about the money cards. They're worth their value. All right, but anyway, about the hidden gems now. We'll move on forward. So I'll take lead on this one. So the hidden gems that we see in this one, I'd like to bring an example for a small handful that we got right here. I like what we saw. And Kyle, you had some really cool ones in red, actually.
Yeah.
I'll have you bring this up. My mistake.
No, it's okay. There's some things like Shaman's Trance and Planar Chaos. I really, really like these cards. I think Planar Chaos was your choice. Shaman's Trance was my choice.
Oh, you brought my lineup as an example.
I just think that they're just so interesting, but I can't really think of any real solid home that these should be in.
Well, Planar Chaos definitely has a home. Red counterspells, continual red counterspells that are... I mean, you'll get it for... All right, well, just look at those cards later. They are hidden gems, so we're going to say segue to our...
Definitely,
yeah,
definitely.
We'll put up right now something... Your corner, my corner.
One of them. But there's also a couple others that you specifically brought up that I think we should mention.
Yeah,
again.
I like the style of Judgment. It had some unique mechanics in the form of that it just did something unusual. And we'll look at cards like Crows and Grip, Riftstone Portal, and Seed Time.
Crows and Verge. You're thinking of a different card. Just the land
that's the split second
one.
one. Crows and Verge. I sit corrected. In which that is a card that is very similar to another land that has the same exact thing, except this one has a color code of both green and white. And so does Riftstone Portal. But Riftstone Portal is working for a dredge type in green-white, which that really doesn't exist. It's very hard to have that work. But they're very unique and useful cards for what they do, and they're very off the grid. And Seed Time, let's bring up Seed Time one more time, is the same exact kind of thing in which it is very unusual for what it does. It makes it so that... Oh, we won't bring it up one more time. There it is. Green has an extra turn engine. I did not know that existed, and Seed Time is, I guess, the only exception to that. And I guarantee you, if you use this, and the same thing with Riftstone Portal, your opponents aren't going to see that coming, but you'll get a huge advantage from it. So if you go for a janky kind of... I wouldn't say gimmick, but if you play some off-the-grid cards, they give you an advantage over your opponent just for the fact that they don't know what's going to hit them. Anyone can plan for a Snapcaster Mage. Anyone can plan for a Wrath of God. Not everyone can plan for a Seed Time. Again, you do take a risk by using cards that are off the grid, but Judgment is stacked full of these kind of cards in which you can get an advantage over your opponent just because they don't have the form of magic literacy that you will get from having these off-the-grid cards. So if you go against the meta a little bit here, and again, not much. These are still very practical cards. They have a purpose. But just by going a little bit off the traditional path, you could get such an advantage, you should win the game. Or like they have to start wasting stuff on things that they don't know because now they're just getting lost. It's a whole psychology that goes with it.
Yeah, I think there is actually a really, really good mix of things like Mirari's Wake that are just straight up powerful, and then things like Seed Time that are like making you think a little bit, and you got to work for it a little bit. Especially Shaman's Trance is a great example of that as well. But hey, they could be potentially really great in the right deck. You just kind of have to find a home for it. See, there they are again. Just really, really interesting cards like that. So it makes you think. It really does make you think, and I'm a big fan of what they did in this set overall. So
yeah, I agree. But let's
move on. Yeah.
But enough about that. Let's move on to the initial impact that we feel that Judgment has established in Magic as a whole. Kyle, I know you know more about the lore than I do. You want to take it away on that?
Well, yeah, I won't get too much into it because it is a very long story and it's very involved. Let's just say
it's like
Judgment
that long if you're looking at it on waves.
Yeah, it is true. It takes place on Dominaria, so where a vast majority of Magic storylines, early on anyway, actually do take place. And there's really nothing too specific that sets it apart much from other sets, and except for maybe a little more focus on the graveyard. Actually, one of the interesting things about Judgment is that to counterbalance Torment, the set before it, focusing a lot on red and black cards, Judgment actually chose to focus on green and white, which we
totally see that.
Yeah, we do see most of the really powerful cards in Judgment are in green and white. And the story, like I said, is a bit complicated, but it is kind of fun to follow, following the journey of Kamal the Pit Fighter, his conversion into a druid, protector of the Crozon Forest, the Mirari, an artifact.
That was way faster. Also. I don't understand how you have such good dictation on that.
There's also...
I can barely say the without it getting wrong.
There's also the Mirari, which is an artifact which just warps magic and reality and nature all around it, and it's kind of cool. It's actually some pretty interesting stuff, and that actually gets tied back into later on in Mirrodin. Oh, we're not going to talk about that right now.
Not yet, at least. But I like it for how it is. It's got a lot of tech cards, and I mean the value of the set can keep going up and down based off what's coming out, and so it is very useful for that. But it's I think a little bit slower. It's kind of like old school gentleman's casual kind of thing where it's like I play a card and it's your turn and then I'll play a card, and eventually there's the time where we both have our attack and trade out the board.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't see a ton of cards. Even Mirari's Wake, something really, really powerful like that.
Played. You keep saying it's not played.
Really,
that one's always played.
It's not really a
you
dirty
don't like
card.
That card. It's an amazing card.
It's not really dirty, you know. It's not like, oh, you know, I'm going to play this and win the game. No, it's just really good.
Yes, you do.
That's
you get all the mana.
Well, it's true, but there are a lot of other cards that can do the exact same thing.
No, they do not.
So, it's actually pretty decent, obviously, but there's a whole bunch of things that you can do in Magic that are probably more broken than that. So,
you know, you said it was decent on camera, so I have live footage of this forever.
I never denied that was good.
You denied it. You know, if we reverse this and rewind, I guarantee you'd be like, it's kind of the opposite of what you just said.
God, let's just move on.
But we're moving on to the ranking. So we're going to rank Judgment. We're going to judge Judgment.
Yes, we are.
And Kyle, it's going to be you. Where do you stand?
All right. Well, like I've said before, I think that I'm going to give it a gold. I really am going to give it a gold.
Even though Mirari's Wake is in it?
Oh, yeah, even in spite of that, sure, whatever. But there was not a ton of format-defining cards for Magic in this set, but like I said before, it was a big hit with the casual crowd, and still really is to this day. Makes the Commander crowd very happy with some very powerful cards that are maybe a bit high-costed for competitive play, and like I said, mostly not modern legal, but still very, very well-liked, and sort of iconic in ways.
That's fair. I mean, I can't argue with your opinion. Well, I can argue with your opinion, but I'm going to let that one stand as is.
I can't quite say that it's a platinum because there would have to be some like really, really expensive / broken things in here for it to be a platinum, and there's not really. It's really pretty fair, all things considered, but there is some high quality to this, so I'm giving it a gold.
I like this set a lot, but unlike you, Kyle, I'm going to give it a silver.
Why?
Well, the reason being is because you gave it a gold, and I can't agree with you on anything. No, but I'm giving it a silver. because it has a lot of good text and a lot of good flavor and it has good style. But a lot of the good cards are already reprinted, and it's mainly the incarnations and Barari's Wake.
Right.
But even the really good ones, such as Genesis, have not been reprinted. So there's a lot of good flavor, there's a lot of good text. It seems like it's the little bit of glue that you need for a full deck plan to go together, but it's not exactly something that seems like it would be set in stone. It seems a little jank, a little flavorful, might win you here, might hold you back in another game. And I like what they did with it. They broke the mold on some color pies without going into a whole planar chaos set or something like that.
Right.
So it was kind of like that to a junior level. It wasn't an unglued set with its ridiculousness, and it wasn't like planar chaos where it's like a scary off the grid kind of thing. This is something that's like, all right, we're gonna add little things here, and this will work for certain decks or certain commanders. Again, this is way before Commander existed, so the fact that that still exists is something worthy. It's not a bronze. It's just shy of a gold in my book. For just the money cards, you really don't see a lot of value with them, and they're the wish cards. And I gotta say, really not excited with that. And you see Flash in a lot of other places.
I can understand that.
So it seems like it's like when you have garlic bread, but it's just too dry.
Well, I'm a little bit more generous than you, but I do kind of agree. I think that this doesn't quite have the goods to make this one of the all-time great sets ever, but it's pretty respectable.
So
and I think
are
that...
you agreeing that it's garlic bread, or are you agreeing that it's... you didn't specify on that.
Yes, garlic bread.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we're just going to go with that. And to wrap things up, we pretty much place it middling, I'd say.
You get a little bit higher than me. I think, well, on the gold spectrum, if it was like out of like 0 to be the cusp of just barely being a gold, or a 10 being close to platinum, where would it fall on that line?
Yeah, probably like, I give it like a 6 or a 7, yeah.
Okay, see, mine was more or less like between like the bronze and to the gold.
Right.
Mine was more or less around like, I guess, like an 8. So again, if we just took a little jump, could have made it.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Alright.
as of right now, that is concluding our judging of Judgment and the set as a whole, so we're going to be moving on to another set in the future. But if you like the cards that we had in our pool today, or any of our other features, be sure to let us know, and let us know what you think, and everything else like that.
And absolutely, you can also look at our social media pages. If you want to comment, or go on Reddit, on Facebook, on Twitter, you can find us all at the handle MTG The Card Pool. And like Stu was saying, come back next week, we'll be looking at a whole different set for you, and this time it's going to be, Scars of Mirrodin. Good stuff there.
Definitely the market size.
Yeah, it will. So for now, I'm Kyle Robertson.
And I'm Stu Galetta.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool.